How is it going, YouTube? Malagant here. We are going to be checking out the Dark Mage that I have. Um, Simply put, this is the character that I like pretty much advanced from Elementalist that I made. The Elementalist guide right now is on the top right. I definitely suggest you to check it out. That's going to be covering more of the bread and butter stuff, and also like the leveling parts, how you should be like approaching the character, what are the stats, what are the attributes, what are like the affixes for your gear, what sort of gear you should be using, what sort of abilities you could use. But this character right over here sort of like progress from that into this Dark Mage that we're going to be talking about. And the reason behind this was like I had more passives in my hands, obviously. That was a level 69 character, this is level 76. And I obviously like continued pushing into higher difficulty. Right now, I think I'm about to like start the Ascended, which is like very high, and obviously like crazy scaled up. The character is taking a sweet time to like do some difficulty like this. I'll probably be doing at the very least one floor at the end of this video. If you would like to check that out too, feel free to. But that being said, like if you're checking this video guide for the first time, if you'd like me to like cover literally everything, I would 100% recommend you to check out my Elementalist. That I gave you the link, or you can also like check out my channel for it as well. It's a very recent video to this one. So the main differences between this guy and the Elementalist, I have said this before over there, the fact that like we were using ailments, but the ailments that we were applying to them wasn't necessarily so important, as in like we were just basically trying to kill the target with some ailments on them, and then we were getting buffed by this, thanks to this immortal offering right over here. That was also the reason why I was calling the character Elementalist, because I was using different types of elements or different types of ailments, and then gaining multiple different immortal offering stacks. On top of everything, we also had like the accords. I had like the lightning accord, and I had also the fire accord that's coming from my tier of ethereal right over there. So this is the fire accord that's coming. It's increasing the entire damage done by the character, and this is the lightning ailment, which is also going to be increasing the spell critical strike chance. So those are like the two other things that the Elementalist was doing. But now this character actually adds to the table, is that like it adds the ailments on the enemies are actually going to be important now. The reason is because now we are going to be trying to stack,
I can't do that.
especially on single target, and this is like, I cannot stress this enough, especially on single target, we will try and like stack the maximum amounts of like shadow ailment, the curse. What curse does in this game is cursed increases the damage taken by the target, and if I'm not mistaken, it's 5% efficiency, as you can see, and all the way up to 34%. It says 5 to 34. I don't necessarily know what this exactly means, but what I do know that is that like I can put 30 stacks of cursed on my target, and this is what we are going to be trying. Like this is going to be the first biggest difference, and the other one is the fact that like we have which time cannot heal. This basically gives you the chance to basically deal the damage twice after a short delay, well 1.5 seconds. And for you to be able to do that is basically the target needs to be in status. But thanks to, as we talked about this on Elementalist as well, thanks to the fragments of Aether on the Aether jump, look at this like little explosion that happens at like the jumping points, and then the landing points basically. We are lagging so bad right now, like 400 ms. I don't really know why. It's so weird. I really hope that fixes before we play a little bit. Anyways, like that explosion right there is basically the thing that is like applying the status onto our enemies. Other than those two, we have this dire junction over here, which was kind of like what I need to take to get like the maximum ailment stacks. 5-5 over there, and then 5-5 over here. Literally everything else is exactly the same. I had to take away some points so that like I was able to like build up to power of the first man, and then Insidious Decay, which is like helping me out by like stacking to 30 a lot faster than I could. And then the Dire Juncture, what it does is that you only take 40% of the enemy's attack when it hits, and then the rest is inflicted 1 second after, so that like if you're some sort of like a, well, basically it gives you time to react, first of all. And then also on top of everything, you have some sort of like a passive spell's lifesteal as well, as you know. Sometimes it comes from like your staff. In my case, my staff doesn't have a lifesteal, but I'm using life leech from my support gem on my belt, so I have like 3% life leech. I'm actually like in the meantime, I'm actually building up to the global life leech over here as well. I think it's going to be quite good for my character. I don't necessarily know. Maybe I'm gonna change it later on. If I do, I'll definitely update you guys as well in my channel. But yeah, what I was saying is that like during this split damage, you can actually lifesteal and then recover the entire damage that was received. So it's very good. So basically like splits the damage in two. But there's some sort of like a buggy interaction when it comes to the dire juncture. So take this at your own risk. If you don't want this, you could definitely like build up to this 5 stacks from there. It's kind of up to you. The buggy interaction with the dire junction is that like when you take damage with some sort of like a on hit effect, it could be like a stun, it could be like a knockback. You're unfortunately gonna get knocked back or like stunned twice, simply because it's kind of hitting you twice. I don't necessarily think that this is in the long run intended. I really hope not, because that is just bullshit. But yeah, it seemed to be that way. So when I'm getting knocked back, it's actually pretty annoying. I'm getting knocked back twice, so I'm trying to like play a little bit better and never getting knocked back at all. Alright, so I'm not going to be covering like the entire stat distribution, but for the most part I have almost everything in ferocity, some in the toughness. I'll give a little bit more to the toughness. I want to be sitting about like 100,000 HP at the very end, and my gear is not necessarily that great right now. But if you want me to talk about like the gear affixes that I really pay lots of value to, spell damage, added spell damage, especially shadow added spell damage, is number 1 damage increase. The second one would be something like critical hit damage, spell critical hit damage. Both of them are incredibly good, since we have like crazy amounts of crit strike chance. The utility wise, cooldown reduction is ridiculously good, followed by transfer time reduction and cost reduction. Those are incredibly good as well. You want about like 100% ish transfer time reduction, not more. I think it's about enough. But when it comes to the cost reduction, you kind of want as much as you can get from both the passives and from your gear, and it's incredibly good that way. Basically, you can roll all the way up to like 40% or something on the shoulders, on your gloves, on your pants, maybe even on your chest piece. I'm not really sure about that one. And another offensive stat that you can roll on your gear as well, remember, it's ferocity. Ferocity is very good. All damage percentage is kind of okay as well, but those are like on the second plan, let's say. When it comes to like the gear that I use, like you kind of need to use helm and the chest piece with heavy armor, the resistance, simply because like we're going for the salvatory anchor here and its modifier, so that like the heavy armor's resistance is going to be multiplied, and therefore we are going to be sitting on very heavy armor. Well, very heavy resistances, I should say. Crazy heavy resistances, actually. Another defense that this character has is coming from the Branded Burst. I've talked about this multiple times, even on YouTube. It's an incredibly strong passive at all times in the game. Early game, late game, it doesn't matter. Ridiculously strong. It pretty much saves you from getting one shot in the late game. Definitely suggest you to take that too. So there's going to be a link down below for both the passives and the modifiers, skills modifiers, if you would like to check that out. Between the Elementalist and this guy, the main differences when it comes to the spells is that like I was using Bulwark of Dawn instead of Solarfall. Now that like I've increased the difficulty a little bit in the expeditions, I'm about like, I think I've came to the Ascended, actually, the last one right there, and just recently completed the last Paragon. Basically the single target damage is lacking a little bit unless I cheese a little bit. There's a cheese that I'll talk about later on as well, and yeah, simply because of that I'm running the Solar Fall now, trying to like get a little bit more single target damage. But I would definitely advise you to run it with the Sunrise, because otherwise you will need to channel it, and that's definitely not good. So thanks to the Sunrise, you basically have your beam there, and if you want, you could actually like cast it again to move it as well. So that is very good. It just like costs you a little bit of willpower, but that's fine. Otherwise, you obviously need to like run the Winter's Grasp. instead of like increased damage, you could, if you want, you could run it with like increased chance to inflict the ailments as well. That's kind of nice too, so that like you stack the curse stacks it a bit higher, but you definitely need to be running with the shadow flame, shadow damage conversion. And in my opinion, you should be running with like permafrost as well, which is, you know, leaving a ground effect, which I think is capable of also stacking up curse stacks on the target by itself, so that like when this is going on, we have the time to, you know, do the other abilities as well. I want to talk about how to engage an elite or like a boss. It is very important. So you basically like start with a blink in, so that like it's kind of, you know, being afflicted by the status, and then afterwards what you could do is like you could start stacking the curse stacks. You don't necessarily need to like play so offensive at the very start if you already know that like the target that you engage is going to be very tanky, right? Like the last boss of the floor that you're clearing, perhaps. So in that case, just like stack the debuff as high as you can, and then afterwards you can basically start with the Rain of Fire and the Solar Beam, and then, you know, continue with the stacks a little bit with Shadow. Same, once again, pretty much is going to be how you're gonna play. I don't necessarily cast the anomaly all that much versus single targets, especially if they do not have any adds at all. Also, the bosses are kind of immune to like this vacuum effect that you have in the anomaly, so it doesn't really matter if you cast this. It is alright to cast the Plague Burst versus even a single target, to be honest with you, simply because the Plague Burst increases the chances of you increases the chance to inflict ailments on enemies for the allies inside. And as you know, like, we want to be, you know, stacking up the curse debuffs as fast as possible. So I have about like 20% chance to put this. When I open my Plague Burst, I have about like 20%, I think, 20.6. Yeah. So I gain about like 1% from that. And then you could like increase this a little bit higher if you take like some other stuff as well, like the ailments things. But I would definitely advise you to not, you know, mess around with like Wisdom all that much. In my opinion, Wisdom is incredibly underwhelming when in comparison to especially Ferocity in a build like this, and Toughness as well. Even Toughness too. Yeah, definitely. A little bit of HP goes a very long way for sure. I still did not die on my character. Obviously, like, I got downed every now and then, but I didn't, you know, die as in like downed 3 times in a row or something like that. I think that's how you die, kinda, and you teleport back to town. So we could actually run an expedition at the very least, like a little bit of it. But before that, I kind of want to cover something. Perhaps I'm going to restart my game because it's lagging incredibly and I have no idea why, you guys. I'm going to close. Oh my god, it's still uploading. I see why. I'm going to close some of the stuff that was open on the background. There was an upload that was going on to YouTube, actually. That was why I was lagging out. So sorry for this downtime. I kind of want to explain and talk about like some of the questions that I've received, especially on like the Elementalist video in YouTube comments. One of the questions was that like, what is your rage dumper? It is my willpower potion, nothing else. You don't in a build like this, you literally don't need another rage dumper at all, and your rage dumper is willpower potion. And what the willpower potion does is that the last rank of the willpower potion right now, the one that we are using, is giving you 500 willpower when you use it. And there's a very big misconception, for a good reason, because of every single other ARPG it has been doing it that way. Now in Wolcen there's something unique. There's an action and a reaction when it comes to willpower and rage mechanic. So you cannot create one of these resources out of nowhere. It's pretty much the simplest way to explain it. And when you have 1000 willpower, you can actually have 500 rage if you use a rage potion. For you to, you know, gain 500 willpower, you cannot gain it out of nowhere. You need to have 500 rage. So basically it's just dumping your rage and giving you willpower instead. So that is what our rage dumper is. Another question was, why aren't you running Catalyst? Why are you running Staff? The best thing that the Catalyst brings to this build is that it is giving you another triple socket. The bows are having the same issue, unfortunately, versus the pistols. We have like 3 less sockets, but our biggest socket is offensive 2, which is, you know, capable of rolling damage to spells. I do prefer shadow damage, as I said. So in that case, like, Catalyst is not capable of rolling this, so it's not the biggest deal anyways. However, there's another really big downside with the Catalyst, is that transfer time reduction thingy. So if you look at over here, 57, this is actually a good roll even, because it goes all the way up to 75%, I think minus 75%, right? So, one thing is out of the way, it is that my character doesn't really attack, right? I don't necessarily need to like scale attacks. And if I wear a Catalyst, or if I hold a Catalyst in my hands, on my main hand, I'm going to need to use either a pistol or a melee weapon, which is, you know, attacking. And I don't even scale it, so why am I using it? Or I will need to use like a rage dumper, as I said. There's no need to rage dump because I'm already dumping with my potion. And another downside is that the transfer time reduction. So the thing that I mentioned about like the action to reaction with the willpower to rage is that like there's a certain time that is involved when you use, let's say, 100 willpower. It will take a little bit of time, and then it will try to give you the exact amount that you use in willpower to the rage, and it's exactly the opposite way as well, vice versa. So if you spend 100 rage, it will take a little bit of time, and it will try to give you willpower instead. So the game is trying to keep you at like 1000 resources at all times, okay? Unless you obviously like increase this amount by like passives or some uniques in the game. So if I blink over here, the game will, you know, spend this willpower and then take a little bit of time and then try to give me exact amount of like rage in return. Let's wait a little bit so that like my willpower is full again. So while running the Catalyst, I'm actually like nerfing this time that is required for me to give the other resource. And while this is going on, what happens is that like basically I have no resource left, okay? And another very important thing that I've mentioned already, maybe I didn't really emphasize enough, is that for you to be able to gain the resource that your, you know, flask is giving to you, you need to have the opposite available. So if I want to like gain 500 willpower from my willpower potion, I need to have 500 rage available to you, to me. So basically it takes the 500 rage and it instantly makes it 500 willpower. But if 500 rage is not available, and it will take whatever is available and give me that much willpower, not more. So, look, like, watch the willpower and rage really carefully. If I spam my ability, I have literally nothing. I use a 500, but I gain just that much. So it's really not giving me 500 willpower in that sense, if that makes sense. I have 51, I use it 450. It's really interesting, actually, like, in that sense. You're gaining about the amounts of like rage available to you by basically using this. And I think actually like the way that I explained it is not necessarily that clear. Another thing that is like really interesting is that as you're spending this, there's some sort of like a grayed out bar on both the willpower and the rage. It's kind of like conserving that point, so you cannot necessarily like, you know, exceed the bar. You cannot necessarily like gain more or like push the bar further away, because like it has some sort of like a cooldown since the transfer time is being delayed. So this is a very downside, like a big downside of this thing that is bringing to you. It's also the reason that we want to be able to use as much transfer time reduction as possible. I think I made this a little bit too complicated than I should have, so apologies. I'll try to like pick it up from here. Let's wait tiny little bit right over here so that like I have full resources, also reuse those. Okay, so when I wear my staff and when I wear a couple of items over here with like transfer time reduction, so 24 from here, 24 and 37 from there, I have 30 from here, and I have 23 over here. I have well about 100%. If you pay attention from willpower to rage, it will be pretty much instantaneous. And then when I have 500, I have 500 willpower instantly because I use my potion. I can use my potion twice again, and twice one more time. So while fighting, I won't even need to like drastically use my willpower like this. This was just a very exaggerated, you know, showcase. But it is possible to do something like this, and it is all thanks to the transfer time reduction. So it literally does what the FX says. It reduces the time that it takes to transfer your willpower to rage. But this is hard to understand if you don't know the fact that like you won't be able to gain willpower back if you don't have that rage. So that like you kind of need to wait that, you know, portion, sort of. I really hope I managed to explain this properly. I am, you know, contemplating of like making very small videos when it comes to especially Wolcen and like other RPGs in my channel as well. It's going to be like explaining these small interactions and like mechanics or like how the systems are working, like they will like the transfer time reduction right over here. I'll most likely be making it the next week. You will be interested, definitely check out my channel. I think this is going to be pretty much it. We can jump into the Ascended perhaps. Check out like how my damage is faring over there. This is going to be the first time that I'm jumping in there. Actually, this is going to be the first time I'm in this difficulty. So, you jump in with the status. This is a little bit more complicated to play. So you jump in with the status, you drop down your curses, and then afterwards you make, you know, Rain of Fire. That's pretty much like how you want to be playing with this guy. I could definitely tell you that like the Elementalist is ridiculously easier to play compared to the Dark Mage, okay? They're like, take that for sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like this is hard to play. It's just like in comparison this one is a little bit more complicated because like the systems that you're trying to, you know, maintain, like the stacks, the status, the curse, and on top of that there are multiple different like buttons to press as well at the right timings. On the Elementalist we had like 2 passives that we had to just spam. We had a golem that was stupidly running around, and our bread and butter was like anomaly and my right click, right? Now it's a little bit more than this. There's a big shield right now. He breaks. Nice. And we are on a really high level for a character like this one. I can easily tell you that like my character is going to be much stronger than what you're watching right now in like a day or two. So don't necessarily say that like, okay, this character cannot necessarily do a little bit higher than this. No, that's not the case. There were actually like a couple of comments on my Elementalist saying like, you know, bleeding edge yada yada, or your, you know, your character looks weak. This character won't be able to push higher than 90. Well, we're on 160 now, you know. I'm pretty sure I'll be on 190 as well. Obviously I'm gonna need to like do a couple of changes, such as like the gear. Especially my gear is not strong whatsoever right now because I didn't necessarily need to like work on my gear so much. In Wolcen there's something like that is very interesting, is that like you actually do need to work on your gear. Not necessarily just like finding the right pieces, but there's some sort of like quality and rarity upgrade system that is actually taking a really long time. So we will be committing to our gear like that, which is going to probably give me quite a lot more DPS than what I have right now. Obviously it will most likely be not looking something along the lines of like what Bleeding Edge is capable of pulling right now, but I'm definitely alright with that. Because it feels like on the other end some of the builds are like quite heavily scaling a lot simpler than this guy, and I'll do my best to like scale my legendary bow. I'll do my best to like scale my caster as well, and I think this is looking still very promising, to be honest with you. It's definitely not complete. But yeah, let me know what you think about the Dark Mage that I came up with, and let me know if there's any suggestion at all that you would like to make. Because there's a couple of suggestions on my Elementalist video already. I can already remember somebody that was like saying the which time cannot heal is very good and it scales really good, or somebody else was mentioning the fact that like Safe from Afar unfortunately not working properly right now. It was like very sad to hear because I really wanted to actually like check it out sometime. There are a couple of passives in this game right now as I'm making this video. Unfortunately not working properly. Hopefully time is going to be the answer for the Wolcen studio. Guys, there's actually something that I would like to show on the animations, since like the ailments are so big. This character, right? When we engage with a blink, let's say, look at the swirly thingy under them. That is status, okay? That is important for you to see. They are inflicted by status, so they are going to be taking double damage pretty much in within a small time frame. Another thing that you should check out is the curse. It is this little dark circle above their heads. That thing. So they're afflicted by a curse, and that is a little bit more important than the status itself, definitely. You don't necessarily want to be inflicting status like right before fighting the boss. Are we already at the end? We are already turn back. We need to kill a little bit more. You don't necessarily need to like worry about applying the Aether debuff, you know, as soon as possible when you engage a boss, because like you won't deal so much damage. You want the curse to be stacked up, so I wouldn't worry about status hold that much, especially with a build like this one. But shadow stacks are extremely important, guys, and that's also why we're also like running shadow damage to the spells above anything else now. It's like on the Elementalist, I was actually like spreading it out a little bit. It didn't really matter all that much, but now it does, for sure.
Can't manage that.
So another mechanic that I want to actually talk about over here is that like I don't necessarily know, like, okay, this is very important. I don't necessarily know if this is intended or this is like how it's supposed to be working out, right? We are using the aspect of Dawn. That is something that I forgot to mention on my Elementalist, and I recently figured something out. The aspect of the Dawn is that the second button is dropping a massive hammer on the ground. And one thing that I learned about these aspects is that like they completely ignore your stats, you guys. They have their own stats, okay? Like no matter how strong or like how weak you are, the aspect is going to be somewhat about the same strength. That is what I can easily tell you. But what this means is that like we drop this hammer on the ground, and then my spells are not necessarily capable of like scaling this hammer. But if I get out of my aspect, the hammer is still on the ground, and I'm now in human form. I can actually scale the hammer, and thanks to this I am hitting out of my mind, you guys, and this is something that I have been using versus single target every now and then, especially if the single target is very difficult. Some of the bosses are definitely more difficult for me compared to the others. There's one guy that is like with like shield, you know, blocking everything and stuff. That guy is very annoying to kill with this character because of like the positioning. Let's go fight the boss, and I'll most likely be able to like show you what I mean with the hammer as well. Otherwise, we can still kill pretty much like every single target, but it does take obviously like considerable amounts more time. But in that case, you kind of need to like perfect your rotation. So you jump in, you know, you jump in with a blink, you put down curses as high as you can, and then afterwards you can start with the solar flare. Try to keep the curse as he moves on. Rain, solar flare again. There's maybe anomaly. It's kind of up to you. I don't think like anomaly is a good damage. As you can see though, like our damage is kind of okay. You know what I mean? Like it will die. We're already like 80%. Now let's try to like show you that hammer trick. So we go into this. We press number 2, drop the hammer, immediately come out. I'm lagging out a little bit, but the hammer is going to be basically hitting out of his mind. Look at his HP. I'm gonna drop one more hammer, get out of it immediately. He's just disappearing, you guys. And this is pretty much like how you can do it as well. But again and again, like I don't necessarily know if this is intended. I wouldn't be surprised if it is not. Perhaps it's like it's something that they would like to fix later on, or perhaps this is okay with them. I don't necessarily know. But without it, our single target is kind of iffy at like this high level, at the ascended level. But that's okay with me. It's a very strong character nevertheless. I really hope that you're going to be enjoying playing my Dark Mage. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from you in the comments when it comes to like if you enjoy the character, if you enjoy the build guide. And if you would like to have any sort of like suggestion or question, feel free to like ask it, guys. I think I've been speaking for about like 30 minutes again. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like it because it definitely supports the video. Apparently, I recently learned it's incredibly good at like, you know, being discovered for the video itself. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you later on.